Free flying is a dream of many bird keepers. It is an interesting and exciting hobby that brings a lot of joy not just to people, but to parrots too. Flight is the most natural way of meeting the requirements in physical activity of parrots. This is also a great emotional release for a bored, captive bird, and a great way of preventing respiratory diseases in birds who are so susceptible to them. But perhaps the main thing is this is undeniable way of seeing that your relationships with your pet is not one-sided.
Hi, my name is Max, and these two are my ringneck parakeets, Cream Puff and Asparagus, who just flew away. A few people asked me to translate my old video on free flying birds from my native tongue, and I'm doing it now. Just to let you know straight away, I'm not a professional bird flyer. I've only been doing it for just slightly over a year, about 15-16 months. And this video is not a guidance on how to fly them, it's just my experience. So if you have a lot of questions on how to learn to fly your parakeets, probably contact professional free flyers. You can ask me some of the questions in comments. I will reply as much as I can, as much as my experience, enjoy the view of the bird butt, as much as my experience allows me to. But generally, this is just a personal experience of how to free fly ringneck parakeets. Enjoy!
So to begin with, I will quickly tell about the parakeets first. We have two, Asparagus, she's on this picture, and Cream Puff. Asparagus ended up with us, or we ended up with her really early in life, and we actually had to hand rear her for a couple of weeks. Asparagus was growing quite quickly, and after a couple of months we actually decided to get her a little friend, and this is how we got Cream Puff. Cream Puff is the same rose ring or Indian ringneck parakeet. He is of a funny mutation, I think it's called turquoise cinnamon. He actually has deformed legs, and his story is a bit weird. We actually went to the breeder to pick up a parrot of a completely different color, and we saw Cream Puff and we just thought we can't just leave him in there. The breeder was a nice guy, but he mistakenly thought that it's just splay legs and they're gonna get better, but actually Cream Puff's got a medical condition which is called arthrogryposis. This is a congenital deformity which is quite prevalent in parrots and also other birds like corvids, for example. Unfortunately, Asparagus and Cream Puff did not bond. They don't really like each other, but they still form this strong connection of a group, I'd say a really small group of two, a duo. But despite of all that, they still prefer to keep together, because as any communal animal, they like the company of each other. They will call for each other if one, for example, flies away into another room. Both of our parrots were adopted when they were just babies, very juvenile, and because of that I only have experience of training to free fly young birds. So this video will mainly concentrate on a technique which I used with babies. So it is of course important to outline that if you have a juvenile parakeet or a very young parakeet, it's still paramount to make sure that the bird trusts you completely. It doesn't have to be imprinted bird, because Asparagus, believe it or not, is not imprinted on people. She started free flying from a very young age, and she started unfortunately mixing and following the wild parakeets. We have quite a lot of them in England. They fly around local parks, and she literally just realized that, hold on a second, people are people but birds are birds, and she realized really quickly that she is in fact a parakeet. So make sure that before starting any training, your bird trusts you fully. When it comes to training, I actually followed a really simple standard technique, I'd say, of recall. It's when you basically start attracting the bird first to your hand. Because cream puff has really funny legs, it's difficult for him to walk around, and it's difficult for him to actually land on your hand. Sometimes he slips down. So instead, for him, we offered him this little chewy doggy toy to land on. One thing I realized when I was training cream puff is using something bright, like for example this rope, and also we have a blue carrier for both birds, gives you a lot of advantage when you're in the park. When birds stray away on a long distance, especially when they're young, they try to mistakenly land on different random people, and some people react really vividly on a parakeet trying to land on them, understandingly. So to avoid stressing the birds out with people who scream at them when they try to land on people, it is recommended to use something like this. Well, this is just my advice, because birds will quickly realize that okay, well, this is my human over there, he's got the blue carrier and this rope, so I'm gonna go and fly there. So we started training our birds with recall, initially obviously indoors for about 8 weeks. We would train them to first walk into a hand, then when they started flying, they would fly short distances, just a few centimeters first, then a meter or two, and then as long as it allows you to get them to fly from one corner of a house to another to land on your arm. Throughout all the time what we were training birds, we would routinely take them outside to the park for 10 to 20 minutes a day, just to get used to the surroundings. I used ropes, just springy safe ropes on their legs, just in case, safety. Some people use harnesses, many people just use ropes. It's just temporarily until birds start flying free, so both methods are completely acceptable. And naturally, after about 8 weeks, they started flying outside, first on a rope from hand to hand, literally about 50-60 centimeters, and then we would just increase the distance every day. And in about a week, I think, we decided to start flying without the safety of the rope, and birds were doing fine initially. They would just fly from one hand to another, 2-3 meters, sometimes even longer distances. Eventually one bird would take a liberty of flying above my head instead of landing on me and making a big loop around the park. Asparagus just made a little circle around me and landed on my shoulder, and ever since from that point she would just start flying around and landing back on me, no problems at all. Cream Puff unfortunately did not have it so easy. He stayed airborne for about 2.5 minutes during his very first flight. He was trying to land on me, but because of the nature of the flight of these birds, it's really fast and really rapid. They accelerate really fast, so it took him a while to figure out that he actually needs to slow down a little bit, and in about 2 minutes and a few failed attempts to land on me, he eventually landed on the head of my friend. When it comes to choosing a place where to start training the bird, I literally just followed the instructions and advice of many experienced free flyers. A common or a big open space like a park is probably your best option for starting to train your bird. This is mainly because although birds can fly from young age, they don't specifically learn how to fly. but they learn how to navigate themselves. They learn how to deal with the wind. They learn how to sharply turn around in a big loop, how to pick up the speed and how to slow down, and how to fly up the air and then descend. So a big open space will be the best location for learning for a young bird. This is, by the way, Asparagus hanging out with wild parakeets. We stopped allowing her to do this because sometimes she gets carried away and she will not come back for a good 3 or 4 hours. Although she always comes back, sometimes it's a little bit annoying to wait for her. That's a young male without a collar yet, trying to court with her. And also, naturally, we would like to prevent her from any possibilities of catching any kind of diseases from wild birds. So now we fly Asparagus near the sunset time, so she doesn't have a lot of opportunity to contact with wild parakeets. But let's get back to flying birds. Now, when it comes to dangers, unfortunately, free flying birds is a very unnerving hobby. Yes, a lot of things can happen, but so these things can happen to other animals. Dogs and cats can run away, but of course, it is easier to locate them rather than an escaped parrot. Some people use GPS trackers for their birds, but the majority of these trackers are more suitable for medium to large parrots. I was thinking about getting them as well for my birds, but they are very expensive, and I am pretty sure they will not tolerate anything on their body, because these GPS trackers are actually attached to a tail feather, and knowing my birds how specific they are with their plumage, I just know they will not tolerate it. So instead I use leg bands with my phone number. This is obviously by far not as good as GPS, but naturally still better than anything. Temperature-wise, we fly birds all year round. In the UK, winters are really mild, but obviously if you live in a country with a really cold winter, when temperature falls down to -15, -20 degrees Celsius, then you probably have to think twice before taking the birds out. Although I know that many people in colder parts of Europe, the temperature falls down to even lower, still free fly the birds. Many of these birds are South American species, and they seem to be absolutely fine. With our birds, Asparagus really doesn't mind cold weather. She's happy to fly away and roost on branches covered in snow. She really doesn't mind any kind of temperature fall, whereas Cream Puff is more specific. If the temperature is below 5 degrees, he will make a short loop around the park and will perch back on your shoulder, saying he's done, he wants to go home. So let's summarize a little bit. When you have a young parrot who's just learning how to fly and navigate in the air, it's best to take them out to do their first flight in a nice, warm, windless day, ideally closer to sunset. This is because birds naturally will try to stay together and stay in the flock closer to the evening. Not when it's dark, obviously, but when the sun is just about to start going down and the bird can figure out it's evening time and it's safer to stay together in a flock. If you fly parrots in suburban parks, then the main danger is, of course, young, fast dogs. If you fly a parrot around houses and your parrot lands on fences and low trees, then cats, of course, is the problem too. Finally, the real problem is wild birds. Now, it is of course natural for birds to react to anything weird in the sky, like for example a colorful parakeet, in places where parakeets are not native. So birds of prey and especially crows and seagulls will try to drive parrots away. When you watch free flying videos on the internet, you probably often see how crows, magpies, seagulls, and other birds chase such large colorful birds as macaws. So obviously you have to be very careful before letting your bird out.
So naturally, if you decided to free fly birds, you have to be prepared that this might be a risky business. It might be complicated and difficult to achieve. And if you build enough of trust with your bird, it's actually quite rewarding and very interesting. I really enjoy flying my birds. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video. They don't like each other. Thank you so much. Bye bye.